My name is Sophia Blackwell, and I should have seen it coming. Not the betrayal. I'd been expecting that for months. But the sheer cruelty of it, the public execution designed to destroy not just my career, but my reputation in front of everyone who mattered in our industry. The boardroom at Blackwell Industries smelled like leather and old money. The kind of place where handshake deals worth millions happened over crystal tumblers of scotch. I'd grown up in rooms like this, watching my father command respect with quiet authority, learning that real power didn't need to shout. My brother Marcus had never learned that lesson. "Ladies and gentlemen," Marcus announced, standing at the head of the mahogany table like he was delivering a State of the Union address. "I've called this emergency board meeting to address a critical issue affecting our company's future." I sat 3 seats down from him, notepad open, pen ready. As VP of Operations, I'd assumed this was about the Henderson merger that had been consuming my last 6 weeks. The one where I'd personally negotiated terms that would increase our market share by 30%. Marcus's eyes found mine across the table, and something in his expression made my stomach drop. "It's come to my attention," he continued, "that we have a liability in our leadership structure. Someone whose judgment has become compromised." Board members shifted in their seats. Margaret Chin, our lead investor, frowned. David Torres, who'd been Dad's partner for 20 years, leaned forward with concern. "Marcus," David said carefully, "what exactly are you talking about?" My brother smiled, but it wasn't the warm expression I remembered from childhood. This was something colder, more calculated. "I'm talking about my sister." The words hit like a physical blow. Every face in the room turned toward me, and I felt my cheeks burn with the sudden attention. "Over the past year," Marcus continued, "Sophia has made increasingly erratic decisions that have cost this company money and credibility. The failed expansion into the Seattle market. The Riverside project that went over budget by 40%. The Henderson deal that she's been bungling for weeks." Each accusation felt like a slap. The Seattle expansion had failed because Marcus had insisted on a location I'd advised against. The Riverside project went over budget because he'd changed the specs 3 times mid-construction. And the Henderson deal, I'd saved that negotiation from disaster twice. "Marcus," I said, my voice steady despite the adrenaline flooding my system. "I think there's been some miscommunication about." "There's been no miscommunication," he cut me off. "There's been mismanagement. Consistent, costly mismanagement that I can no longer ignore in my role as acting president." Acting president. The title our father had given him 6 months ago when Dad stepped back to focus on his health. A temporary position that Marcus had been treating like a coronation. "The board deserves to know," Marcus said, pulling out a folder thick with documents, "that Sophia has been operating outside her authority, making decisions without proper approval, and frankly, demonstrating that she lacks the judgment necessary for executive leadership." I stared at him, this man who'd shared bunk beds with me as a child, who'd practiced his valedictorian speech in front of me a dozen times, who'd called me crying when his first marriage fell apart. Now he was systematically destroying my career with the precision of a surgeon and the mercy of an executioner. "Furthermore," he continued, "I have reason to believe that her personal relationships have compromised her professional judgment. The Henderson deal, for instance, involves a company where she has personal connections." The implication hung in the air like smoke. James Henderson and I had dated briefly 2 years ago, something that had ended amicably and had nothing to do with the business relationship I'd been building with his company for 8 months. "That's enough." The words came out sharper than I'd intended. "Marcus, you're completely misrepresenting." "I'm presenting facts," he said, raising his voice for the first time. "Facts that demonstrate you're not qualified for your current position, let alone any position of greater responsibility." Not qualified. The words echoed in the sudden silence, and I felt something inside me crack. Not break. I was stronger than that, but crack enough to let the anger through. "You want to talk about qualifications?" I stood up, facing him across the polished table. "Let's talk about how I increased operational efficiency by 22% last year. How I negotiated the Morrison contract that saved us $3 million. How I've been running damage control on every project you've touched since Dad made you acting president." "Sophia." His voice was patronizing now, the tone he'd used when we were teenagers, and he wanted to remind me that he was older, smarter, destined for more. "You're proving my point. This emotional outburst, this inability to accept criticism." "Criticism?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You're not criticizing me, Marcus. You're executing me. In front of the board, in front of people who've watched me work for this company since I was 22 years old. The room was dead quiet. Margaret Chin was taking notes. David Torres looked uncomfortable but didn't intervene. The other board members, people I'd worked with, eaten Christmas dinner with, considered family, sat in silence and watched my brother systematically dismantle my career. The fact remains, Marcus said, sitting back down with the confidence of someone who knew he held all the cards, that this company needs leadership it can trust. Leadership that puts the business first, not personal interests. He opened the folder and slid a document across the table toward me. Which is why I'm recommending your immediate termination from Blackwell Industries. The paper landed in front of me with a soft whisper. Termination. Not resignation, not reassignment. Termination, which would follow me to every job interview for the rest of my career. You're firing me. My voice sounded strange, distant, like it belonged to someone else. I'm protecting this company, Marcus replied. Something someone in this family has to do. That's when I realized this wasn't about qualifications or job performance, or even the Henderson deal. This was about succession. About Marcus ensuring that when Dad finally stepped down completely, there would be no question about who inherited control of Blackwell Industries. This was about erasing me from the company my grandfather had built, my father had grown, and I'd bled for. I looked around the table one more time. At Margaret, who'd mentored me through my first major presentation. At David, who'd taught me to read financial statements when I was still in college. At the other board members who'd watched me grow from the boss's kid into a competent executive. None of them spoke. Fine, I said, reaching for the termination papers. If that's how you want this to go. That's when the door opened. Not quietly, not tentatively, but with the kind of authority that made everyone in the room instinctively straighten. James Blackwell, my father, the founder and CEO of Blackwell Industries, walked in like he owned not just the company but the building and everything in it. He looked older than when I'd seen him last week, but his presence still filled the room the way it always had. Silver hair perfectly styled, navy suit impeccable, eyes sharp as winter sky. Marcus went pale. Dad, I didn't know you were coming today. Clearly, Dad's voice was quiet, but it carried the weight of 30 years building this company from nothing into an industry leader. Margaret, thank you for calling me. Margaret Chin nodded once. So she had been taking notes, but not for Marcus. Dad walked to the head of the table, and Marcus automatically stepped aside. Old habits. I've been listening from my office, Dad said, looking directly at Marcus. Quite enlightening. He pulled out his phone and set it on the table. The screen showed a call in progress. He'd been connected to the conference line the entire time. 43 minutes, he continued. 43 minutes of watching my son attempt to destroy my daughter's career with lies, misrepresentations, and what I can only describe as breathtaking incompetence. Marcus's mouth opened, but no words came out. Dad picked up the termination papers from in front of me, glanced at them, then tore them in half. The Seattle expansion failed because you overruled Sophia's site recommendations and chose a location that any first-year business student could have told you was wrong. The Riverside project went over budget because you changed the architectural plans 3 times after construction had begun. And the Henderson deal, the one you claim she's been bungling, is the most profitable contract this company has negotiated in 5 years. He dropped the torn papers in front of Marcus. But more than that, you just attempted to fire the best executive this company has ever produced. Someone who's increased our operational efficiency, saved us millions in costs, and has been single-handedly preventing your mistakes from destroying everything I've built. The silence that followed was different from before. This wasn't uncomfortable. It was electric with the kind of tension that comes right before everything changes. Dad turned to face the board. Ladies and gentlemen, I called you here today. Yes, I called this meeting, not Marcus, to announce a leadership transition that's been in development for the past 6 months. My heart stopped. After 30 years as CEO, I'm ready to step down and transition to chairman of the board. The question has been who should succeed me. He looked at Marcus, then at me. I've been watching, evaluating, testing both of my children to see who has the judgment, the integrity, and the vision to lead Blackwell Industries into the future. Marcus found his voice. Dad, I've been acting president for 6 months. I've proven that I can. You've proven that you can't. Dad's words cut through Marcus's protest like a blade. You've proven that you're willing to lie to the board, sabotage your own sister, and put your personal ambitions ahead of the company's welfare. He turned to me, and for the first time in an hour, I saw kindness in someone's eyes. Sophia, you've proven the opposite. Even under attack, even facing betrayal from your own family, you defended your work with facts and integrity. You didn't attack Marcus personally, even though you had every right to. I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. Moreover, he continued, the Henderson deal you negotiated includes terms that will revolutionize our supply chain management. I've been in contact with James Henderson for weeks, finalizing details that you weren't aware of. Details that will make this the foundation of our growth strategy for the next decade. He smiled at me, the same proud smile I remembered from my college graduation, from my first successful presentation, from every moment when he'd seen me accomplish something I wasn't sure I could do. Which is why I'm announcing today that Sophia Blackwell is our new president and CEO, effective immediately. The words hit like lightning. CEO. Not acting president, not interim leadership. CEO. Marcus, Dad continued, his voice gentler now but still firm. You'll be transitioning to a consulting role with the company, if you choose to accept it. Marcus stared at him like he was speaking a foreign language. Consulting. You have good instincts for project management, Dad said. But you don't have the judgment for executive leadership. Today proved that beyond any doubt. He turned back to me. Sophia, your first executive decision is what to do with Marcus's office. I believe it has a better view than your current space. I looked at Marcus, my brother, my childhood playmate, the person who'd just tried to destroy my career, and felt something settle in my chest. Not revenge, not cruelty, just clarity. Pack his office, I said quietly. I'll need the space. Marcus's face went white, then red. Then he stood up, straightened his tie, and walked toward the door. He paused before leaving, looked back at me once, and for just a moment I saw not the calculating executive who'd tried to execute me, but the little boy who'd been afraid he'd never be good enough. Congratulations, he said, and I think he might have actually meant it. After he left, Dad addressed the board. Ladies and gentlemen, I present your new CEO. I trust you'll give her the same support you've given me. Margaret Chin was the first to stand. Congratulations, Sophia. I look forward to working with you. One by one, the other board members followed suit. Handshakes, congratulations, and the gradual shift in dynamics that happens when power changes hands. As the room cleared, Dad and I were left alone. Did you really plan this? I asked. He smiled. I planned to announce your promotion today. Marcus's behavior was unexpected, though not entirely surprising. How long have you known? That you were ready to lead? About 2 years. That Marcus wasn't? About 6 months. He sat down in the chair next to mine. I'm sorry it happened this way. You deserved better than having to prove yourself under attack. I thought about that, about the humiliation, the betrayal, the 43 minutes of having my career systematically dismantled by someone who was supposed to love me. Actually, I said, I think it was exactly what I needed. If I can handle that, I can handle anything. Dad laughed. That's exactly why you're going to be a great CEO. 3 hours later, I sat in my new office, Marcus's former office, with its corner windows and view of the city skyline. My nameplate had already been changed. My computer had been upgraded. My business cards would be ready tomorrow. I thought about calling Marcus, maybe trying to rebuild the bridge he'd burned. But not today. Today was for looking forward, not back. My assistant knocked and entered with a stack of contracts. Ms. Blackwell, she said, and the title sounded strange but right. The Henderson papers are ready for your signature. I picked up my pen, the same one I'd been ready to use to sign my termination an hour ago, and signed my name with the confidence of someone who'd finally stopped apologizing for taking up space. Sometimes the people who try to destroy you end up proving exactly why you deserve everything they tried to take away. Sometimes family betrayal reveals who you really are when everything else is stripped away. And sometimes the room you get fired from becomes the room where you finally step into your power. I was exactly where I belonged.